if it works, I don't overthink it, and I keep going on and finishing those tracks, because you need to finish music, you need to get it out there. That to me was more nerve-wracking than DJing and mixing some tracks. But then I find most artists hit like this wall at some point or another where, like, for whatever reason, they're not happy with what they're making, they're not happy with what's coming out, and they kind of go on a downward spiral a bit. You think hardware will make you a better producer, but it doesn't, right? Like, it all comes down to how you know your way around a DAW and how you know how to compose music. It was like, oh, you need VCAs. I was like, what the heck is a VCA? Like, I don't even know what that is. But then I realized these are more just like it's almost like you're building like your own custom synth, and a lot of these pieces are more like the internal parts of a synth that you wouldn't necessarily know are there. But there's no pieces hardware that can essentially do something better than what Ableton and software can do. Like, Ableton and software will always be the most flexible and comparable sound designing tool. For sure. I still sat in the studio every day, almost having like a mental breakdown every day because I couldn't do this. But I was like, without music, like, I don't know what I would do, man.
Welcome back to another Rave podcast, and today I'm joined with Paul Franc.
Hello.
How's it going, Paul?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. So,
good. Where
did the name Paul Franc come from?
Okay, so Paul Franc is actually my middle names. So I have two middle names, and it was during COVID. I decided to make the switch. One of my friends recommended to maybe rebrand, and Paul Franc was just easy on the tongue, easy to remember, because I always felt kind of silly when someone was like, what's your artist name? And I was like, oh, it's just my name, right? Because it was just my full name before, and I just feel like it's so hard to remember, where Paul Franc is so easy to just search up on socials or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it's homage to my grandfathers, because they both passed now, and just at the time when I made the choice to do that, it just felt right, homage to them.
Yeah, not nice that your grandparents passed away, but nice that you've got the names to do that, right? That's sick. Yeah, man, that's cool. Yeah. So let's take it back then. So where did you grow up, first of all?
Yeah.
What was life like back when you were young, and what sort of influences got you into where you are today?
Sure, yeah. Well, born and raised in Ontario, just outside of Toronto. Just started young there, and then it was about in high school. Like, I was always into music. Like, I always listened to music, enjoyed music. And then I think it was in high school, I had like a metal phase and like a punk phase. And I just remember I was like, Mom, I want an electric guitar. Get me an electric guitar for Christmas. And then I think it was like grade 9 or grade 10, she got me an electric guitar. And I was so hooked. I was obsessed with playing, self-taught. Every day after school, I was just going straight to my room, and I would jam on my guitar and my amp for like hours on end. It was at that point too, I kind of realized I had like, I was able to recognize pitches and sounds. Like, I wasn't learning these songs from like sheet music or guitar tabs. I was just listening to what they're playing, and I would just copy that and was able to learn music like that. So kind of self-taught. And then through college and whatnot, I was, I was in a bunch of different metal bands, and I kind of song wrote for all those bands and whatnot. And then eventually I actually got into doing vocals, because there was this one band that had like a really good sound, but they needed a vocalist. So just again, in my bedroom or driving to work in a car, I would start learning how to sing and scream, just like people are probably pulling up beside me and like the stoplight seeing me shout.
Like roaring and like screaming and like,
straight up gutturals, so like all that. Because
I got the microphone behind me, so
yeah. That mic I've actually had since I was again in high school. It's like a 20-year-old condenser mic.
Wow, really?
$100 from Long McQuaid, and still kicking.
Good old Long McQuaid, eh?
Yeah. So then, did that for a while, and then fast forward to like 2010, I moved to Toronto downtown, got exposed to the rave scene, went to my first big rave at this club called The Government, which was like this 13-room like megaplex.
13-room?
Yeah, it was a massive warehouse club, just all sorts of international artists there all the time. Just thousands of people. Like, it felt like a festival every weekend, to be honest. And just, got exposed to the nightlife culture, the dance music, all that stuff. And just, I was hooked instantly. So 2010, I started DJing, was going out a lot. So met a lot of people in the scene in Toronto. had a lot of opportunities to play gigs. And yeah, gradually started my production journey from there. You know, obviously my first productions were very rough, not good, but just haven't really quit since then. And 2016, I moved here. The one thing I love about Vancouver is just like I found the sound was like more laid back here. Where
it's pretty laid back here, isn't it?
Yeah, more deeper, more organic, more minimal, like chill minimal music. And Toronto was very like, you know, concrete jungle, hustle and bustle, high energy music. But here was like more laid back, and that at that point also kind of influenced my sound. And then just always been producing. And then fast forward to today, just writing everything from deep tech to minimal to tech house, Rominimal.
Sick.
Anything minimal, dark, moody, groovy beats. That's my jam.
So wicked, mate. So back then when you was growing up, heavy metal was like the in thing back then.
Yeah,
it's kind of the most popular thing. And then getting in, obviously you got into electronic music later on, but was there any sort of electronic influences back when you was young, listening to rock music and heavy metal stuff?
You know, not really.
No?
You know, if I could really think to some of the first tracks I might have heard in the electronic music before I was into it, I'd have to say some Deadmau5, like Move For Me, or like I Remember with Cascade.
Yeah, Not Exactly was a banger.
Yeah.
Deadmau5,
Yeah. And it was just like, it was more something that you'd catch on the radio. But where I was born and raised outside of Toronto, like there was no house music. It was like you go to a club or a bar there, it was all top 40s, like, you know, Lil Jon, Usher, like, all that kind of stuff, right? So it wasn't until I came to Toronto, I truly got like ingrained and into that scene and that sound, because it was nowhere to be found where I was born and raised.
Yeah. Oh, nice, mate. So getting into like DJing, then how was it for you? I know you said obviously you was networking with people and breaking into the scene to get some DJ gigs. How was that process for you? Because obviously it was a bit different back then as what it is now. But what tips would you give for people that want to get into DJing that you did back then?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, once I got exposed to that, I was in my early 20s, and I was just really, like, the one thing I loved about Toronto is people there that age, like, everybody in that city just wanted to network and get to know people. And, you know, I met some people early on who were very into the scene, and suddenly they became my good friends. And yeah, it was just a matter of going out to the clubs, you know, showing face, supporting those parties. And I was going there at first just to enjoy the music, and then, you know, meeting the right people. And then ultimately it just started with, hey, you want to play here? You want to play there? You know, I'd maybe sent them a mix that I made at the time. I think I posted a couple mixes on SoundCloud. But yeah, like for any newcomer, I think it's the most important thing is if you want to play somewhere, go support and genuinely, you know, be there and enjoy the music and enjoy the culture and the people. Because I think if you go out and just go there with the expectation like, hey, I want to play there, and like that's the first thing you say to the guy who runs the event or whatever, like they're not going to take you seriously. It's more about giving than taking, if that makes sense.
For sure, yeah. No, because the reason why I do ask this is because people, do get questions, you know, I'm a bit nervous about getting out there and, you know, getting into the scene and trying to DJ. And how was it for your first DJ set that you ever done? Like what was that like?
Oh boy. You know what? I think the first one went pretty well, all things considered. But
Was you nervous?
I wasn't that nervous actually, because I had that experience playing metal shows. And during that time, like to me, going on stage and singing and screaming in front of like 500 or 1,000 people, because I had some successes during those times as well. That to me was more nerve-wracking than you know, DJing and mixing some tracks. And yeah, like but that said, I certainly had a couple DJ sets where, you know, something wouldn't go as planned, or the gear wasn't working out, or I just completely bombed it.
Story of our lives, that one.
Cut the music altogether. Yeah, like I've been there, but ultimately, you know, if that happens, like you got to just keep pushing on and learn from those mistakes. Right?
What's it like being in a band and then like you know, getting on the stage for the first time, and you know, like you're training your voice to do like it's like wow, sort of stuff, right? What was it like when you first got up like in front of a crowd to do that? Because for me, I'd be like, oh fuck this is too much for me.
Well, so my first metal show ever, I was a guitarist in that band at that time. So I wasn't doing vocals, and I think when you play your first gig, regardless of whatever you're doing, whether you're DJing or playing guitar or singing, the adrenaline is just so high. I like my first gig, I remember it was just such a rush that we probably played for, I'm guessing, an hour, right? But it felt like it went by in like 10 minutes. And you barely remember anything. And I think the biggest thing is like you're putting yourself out there, and like, of course you could be judged, of course you could be criticized, and you know, but once you get over that hurdle and you get comfortable with it, that's like the most empowering thing ever, right?
Yeah. All right, that's cool. Because it is nerve-wracking. Like, I've seen some bands, you know, and I'm just like, how the hell do they like you know, sing and all the bands go together and everything, right? It's a bit difficult just chucking it in a box and doing it, right?
Well, it was even harder being a vocalist because, you know, when you play guitar, you could have a couple drinks, enjoy yourself. Or let's say if you go out the night before and you do whatever, and you know, of course, when you're younger, it's easier too. But I remember the one tough thing was there was this one gig I had. I was in a band at the time where I was doing a lot of singing over screaming. And in my opinion, singing's actually harder than screaming. Once you got the technique down, because singing, it's like you got to hold the notes, you got to go up and down, and I think it's more taxing on the voice to sing well. But I remember there was like one gig I did, and the night before I had a couple drinks, went out with some friends, and I remember I was a little rough the next day, and it completely fried my voice for that gig, which I was so disappointed because I didn't do well there. But I learned that, you know, the voice is a muscle, and you got to like take care of it if you want to perform well. And that was not something I had to keep in mind when I was just a guitarist or even a DJ for that matter,
just
right?
knocking bad drinks and just about fuck it, just wing it.
Yeah, like, you know, like some vocalists, they'll even like, you know, drink honey tea or something like that just to coat the throat before they sing. Like there's all sorts of techniques, right? So I felt like it was a lot more demanding being a vocalist than a guitarist in that sense.
Nice, mate. So going from you know, your first sort of gigs and in DJing as well, what was the next step in your sort of process for that then? Like moving into the scene in Toronto?
Yeah.
'Cause obviously, like you said, you're building networks and things like that. Yeah. So how did you grow from that, from the first one?
Yeah, it was just, you know, I was going out a lot, I was networking a lot, and I was playing some gigs, and then, so the one milestone I would say for me in Toronto was, you know, because when I first started playing, it was like these, you know, dive bars or smaller intimate venues, and that always went well. But then it kind of went to like, okay, there was this one spot in Kensington Market in Toronto, which is like, it's like the commercial drive of Toronto, like the hipster kind of like, you know, chill area. Anyways, they had this dive bar there that they always had packed events and all that stuff. And I remember I went there and I played a couple times, and eventually I became a resident there where I was playing like all the time. And every time I played there was always packed. And then gradually the gigs got bigger and bigger when I was in that DJ circuit, right? So the one milestone, what I was going to say for me was, like I said, the first time I went to the Government, that was like the club. That was like the place to be. 13 rooms. And they had this, I remember the first night I was there, they had this tech house room called the Gallery, and it had like these pink or these purple furry walls, and like it was just all this crazy artwork and always bumping. And I just remember one thing led to another, and I met the right people, and then eventually I played the Gallery and played there a bunch of times after. But that was a big milestone for me because I was like one of the rooms I fell in love with. That made me fall in love with house music. And and at that point playing there, it was kind of like when I was on that stage, the dance floor was packed, and I was just like, man, this is what I wanted. This is great. Like, this is so rewarding to be in this room when I used to look up to it so much, right? So once I started playing gigs there, I played some of the bigger rooms in the Government as well. Played other big clubs like Mod Club and whatnot. And yeah, that was probably like the peak of my Toronto experience. And I played a couple festivals and stuff out there, and it was just growing that network, and it was going really good. And that was just before I moved to Vancouver. But ultimately, unfortunately, they actually closed the Government.
Not another club closure.
Because they sold it to build condos, of course, right?
God, yes. So, the same old story.
Yeah. So when that kind of closed down, that was more or less like an end of an era for a lot of people, I think, in Toronto. And, I felt like the nightlife in Toronto was changing a bit, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because we were losing a lot of good places. There's still some good clubs there, of course, like Coda and whatnot. But yeah, that was kind of the peak. And then, intuitively, I think my time in Toronto was kind of coming to an end too, because it was always just like go, going out so much. And I found kind of towards the tail end of my time in Toronto, I was finding reasons to get out of the city on my time off.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, cool, man. So where obviously you moved over here then, and you knew I've been in this position as well myself, coming here. So how did you sort of find your way into breaking into the scene here, networking? Because I've been in your shoes, so I haven't walked in your shoes, but I kind of understand it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, honestly, it was a bit of a slower burn coming here and getting into the scene out here. I've been here since 2016. So 5, 6, 7 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I came here, that drive to really hit the ground running and network everywhere and all that stuff, it's like I kind of was already like been there, done that. So I wasn't so involved in the scene. Like I go out to parties and stuff like that, but it took a little bit longer for me to find my place here with playing gigs, just because I think I wasn't putting in as much effort on that. Now, that said, I was really at that point really focused on producing. So and everybody's production journey is different, right? But I find a lot of artists, like when I was in Toronto, I made a bunch of tracks. They got some good exposure, good labels, good DJs playing them all over the world. But then I find most artists hit like this wall at some point or another where, like, for whatever reason, they're not happy with what they're making. They're not happy with what's coming out, and they kind of just go on a downward spiral a bit. So coincidentally, when I was here, that's kind of what I was going through, where I was like, hey, like I can compose these ideas. I like the ideas, but the production quality is not where I want it to be. And I think for the first couple of years I was here in Vancouver, I was putting more focus into like developing my sound and trying to get to where I wanted to be, right? So that's where most of my energy was going. But fortunately, I still had like some great opportunities out here. I played U+1 a handful of times, opened up for Pig and Dan the one year.
Oh, lovely stuff.
Yeah, and a couple other things like that. But now COVID, oddly enough, kind of reset the nightlife too, and I think everybody was just eager to get out again once that all kind of ended, right? Yeah. So I think at that point I was kind of ready to kind of start pounding the pavement again, and fortunately, I've met a lot of great people out here and got these awesome opportunities to play the gigs that I play now.
Nice, mate, nice. So obviously, you played U+1's wicked, isn't it?
Oh, it's
definitely
what
good.
A club, yeah.
And you managed to play some really good clubs, and I've seen you play, and yeah, mate. I mean, you've kind of established yourself pretty well here in Vancouver. I mean, what would you say has been the highlight of what you've played, and here and Toronto? What would be the highlight for you?
Yeah, so hands down, Government in Toronto. Playing that place a bunch of times was certainly the career highlight for me in Toronto. Out here, I'd honestly have to say playing my modular sets.
Yeah, it's a pretty sick setup. Yeah, I'll put the camera to it. So they've probably already seen you with it anyway.
Yeah.
Shots, but
there it is.
Yeah.
But so again, that was kind of like the whole modular thing was just like a COVID project that just went way too deep and way too far into it. But I was just trying to find something to do to create social media content. And I saw a lot of other modular guys, doing these little modular jams. So I was like, why don't I start trying to do that? I was trying to find a reason to get off the computer too, because I was working remotely and just always in front of the computer screen. Yeah. So that's kind of where the modular came into play. But yeah, that really created a lot of great opportunities once, because I was doing these, like, I was building out these little jams on this system, and then I started getting like random offers from promoters out here. Hey, Norm, you want to play a live set? Like an hour-long live set. And I was like, oh my God, like I come up with like 5-10 minute ideas here, and now suddenly I got to come up with an hour worth of like original content. But it was a challenge, right? It was a challenge, and more or less, the one promoter came my way, and Hypercell, it's a collective of people who did that. the venue seemed right, the people seemed right, and I was like, I'm gonna just give this a shot and see what happens. And I was shocked at the outcome, like out of the turnout for the event. That was amazing, and that really just opened up a lot of doors. So Vault, awesome club.
Yeah, man, it's good.
Right? Yeah. So that came. I got to give it up to my buddy Leon from Melandrix. He helped orchestrate my opportunity to play there and play in the main room a couple times, and then I just got tight with the Vault guys after that. But those gigs there were truly something special. Again, it gave me that like feeling of like the band days, like when I told you, like because it's like a live.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Right. So I remember my first live set at KW Studios in Gastown. It was the same thing like when I told you when I played my first live gig as a band, where it was like the adrenaline was going so hard again. And it felt like that set was done in 10 minutes. Like, and I haven't felt that in such a long time. So that was like, being challenged to do that, and then putting my blood, sweat, and tears into that live set, and then getting a good response. Yeah, that was like definitely a milestone and a highlight for me so far here in Vancouver.
Yeah, man, that's like you said as well. When you I'm going to go into this bit, like stepping out your comfort zone, and then that's when you really shine, right? Yep. Like I done a live set during lockdown, and I was like playing it safe for the first 10 minutes, and I was like, fuck it, let's just make it on the fly. And it was actually something that come out pretty good, So just shows you, didn't it? When you get pushed into a little bit of an uncomfortable position, that's when you really shine, right? So
yeah, I mean, you gotta. I'm a firm believer on change and challenging yourself, and you gotta. There's no harm in like trying, even if it doesn't go as well as you wanted it to. You can't hate on yourself for trying something different and trying to push yourself forward, like creatively, personally, professionally, like. That's just kind of exactly. Something I believe in life,
Yeah, so you've obviously been to, I know you mentioned festivals, I'm going to go into that. So you've been to a lot of festivals. What sort of festivals would you say have been the best that you've been to or even played at?
Yeah, I mean...
So I know you played a couple of festivals, right?
I played a couple of festivals in like Toronto and whatnot, more like underground ones like Garden of Eden and whatnot, and... festival wise, I certainly feel like I could use some more exposure and experiences on that front. But if I was to tell you some of the best festivals I've been to, Toronto, I think they still have it. They used to have this festival called Digital Dreams. And it happened at this place called Ontario Place. And this was when like Toronto, I felt like was at their prime with like these festivals and bringing all these high caliber artists and all this stuff. So they had this Digital Dreams Festival, and they had 3 stages, and they had this one stage called Echo Beach. And again, Toronto's very serious about their deep house, their tech house, their techno.
Yeah.
So I remember this Echo Beach, they had like, 12 hours of music, and the way they curated the artists was like 12 p.m. noon. It's like, slow, groovy, daytime deep house, and then each artist that came on slowly brought the energy up.
Stepped up a bit,
right? It felt like a giant marathon set, and then all the way to the end of the night where, like, I think the first night they had Richie Houghton closing.
Wow.
And then the second night they had Dubfire closing, and that was the first time I saw both of those guys. I was really into techno at the time. That was the first time I saw both those guys play, and those sets were, like, absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was an awesome festival, even though it's just in Ontario, but... I'd have to say the other festivals I've really enjoyed was I went to SXM Festival back in 2017. Yeah. That was in St. Martin in the Caribbeans, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that St. Martin's just this tiny little island, right?
Yeah.
It was a 10-day festival. Like
Fuck
10 days.
Hell.
Yeah, and we had this villa, and
nice.
And the whole island came alive for this festival, right? So like, not only did they have this beach stage and like all this stuff, but like
everyone was working.
Everyone was working, and then like all the clubs after, like every club imaginable had some artists, some international artists playing the after parties, going into the wee hours in the morning, and that was just like 10 days of that stuff. Like I swear to God, I shed a couple years of my life off of that. But that one was good. And then recently went to Arc Festival in Chicago.
Oh, was that like?
Oh, that was awesome. They had, again, I think it was like 3 or 4 stages, but they had the Elro stage there, which was amazing. That whole production is just something else, right? With all the characters and the confetti and the lights. That was really cool. And then they had the main stage that had like fire, like pyrotechnics and like fireworks, and then like Tale of Us and Eric Prydz played that one, and like the visuals, like they had the big screen back there, and just it's like a whole visual audio experience, right? So that festival was another cool one I did recently.
Yeah, fucking hell, you've been about, haven't you?
Yeah,
been around.
Seen a couple things.
Yeah, share some years off your life.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious. I can't believe 10 days for a fucking festival.
Dude, you have no idea, man.
Jesus
and like,
Christ.
I don't know. Maybe I'm like, you know, a little bit of a mischievous one for saying this, but of course when you go to like, you know, these new places, you go to this new environment and you got all your friends there. And it's like the first day you're there, obviously, like everybody's going off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's just all so new.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was like first night was like amazing. And then I felt like day 2 to 10, I was just trying to catch up from the first day.
You know? Do you see yourself like declining as the days are going on?
Oh, yeah.
I'll be like, I can see day 10 like in the light there. I've got to crawl there, and you just crawl into events eventually.
crawling back to the plane to get out of there, man.
I never heard St. Martin's do anything like that. That's kind of. I remember the whole thing about the fire festival. I remember that was one thing, wasn't it? But I never heard like anything like this before. For you know. Yeah,
they still do SXM festival. Like it's happening this year. They got a lot of good names on it. You know, all types of genres when it comes to house and techno and minimal and deep tech and just countless little beach stages everywhere you go. We rented like this villa, which was like awesome.
Sick.
Good food, and it was and they're still doing it. I think St. Martin had the year or two after I went, they had this really bad hurricane that kind of wiped out a part of the island, but from what I see, they're back in full force and they're doing it.
Sick, man. That's cool. Yeah. I read that. Yeah. So getting back to Vancouver then, obviously after the horrific vid, shall we call it the vid?
Yeah.
COVID, yeah. After all that then, so you spent some time, you bought your hardware there, and you kind of got a bit more involved, and as you said, as COVID sort of ended, you sort of went out for it. How was it like sort of picking that stuff up and learning it? I know you said you had like a 5-minute set, but I mean, how was it like building that stuff during that time?
So like you know, I was a synth guy you know, for a few years during COVID, I guess you can say. So I think the hardware journey, I'll say, all kind of started when I bought my first synthesizer, which was a Sub 37, a Moog Sub 37. And then it was kind of like, I started to learn how to like sculpt my own sounds.
37 is a bass, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like nice, fat, warm sound. But it was a mono synth, right? And then at the time I was making a lot of more like organic house and like melodic techno type stuff. So I was like, this is great for like bass lines and the odd lead. I was really into Stefan Bodzen at the time.
Oh, man, yeah. He's good though. Like
he's a genius, man. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what Moog he's got. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's a Sub 37.
It's a 37, yeah. He's also got that mixer thing, isn't he, that he's had made for himself. Is that right?
It's like a custom MIDI controller.
Yeah. And I remember he'd whack up the filter and be like, what? And you get well into it, right? And I was like, that's pretty sick.
No, he's a genius because like he's classically trained and you can tell in his productions, and like he's figured out his sound with the Moog. So for me, that was kind of like what enticed me to buy that synth. But then I was like, okay, it's monophonic. Now I want a polysynth. So then I bought a Prophet, and then I had the Moog and the Prophet, and I was like, I want more hardware. And I bought all these synths that all essentially kind of did the same thing. They're all just analog synths. And then this hardware thing it's funny because you can read about it. Some people post about it where it's like, you think hardware will make you a better producer, but it doesn't, right? Like it all comes down to how you know your way around a DAW and how you know how to compose music. So, interesting enough, I ended up selling all that gear actually. And just went back to being in the box. But yeah, modular synthesis was something that just always kind of enticed me. It was just like seemed so mysterious, and just like I felt like you can really make sounds beyond like the traditional analog kind of sound, like more FM based digital, like whatever. Like again, during COVID, I think it was just like, you know what, I'm going to just start trying it out. I want to see, I was making weird minimal stuff at the time. So I think I bought the case to start and, the Platts, which is that one.
I'll switch your camera to it. Just give me a sec.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. So, sorry, I had to have a little P break.
Yeah.
So yeah, you was explaining your this setup that you built up then. So
yeah.
How did you know where to start first of all with this?
Yeah, so it's like at this point when I started this, like I understood what modular or not, I understood what synthesis was, right? Like I understood my way around the synthesizer. I was sculpting my own sounds with all those synths I had. But then when it came to this, it was just so otherworldly to really understand where to start. But I knew like oscillators are what generate your sound, and then you need like just like when you're designing a synth, there's like the volume envelope, right, to sculpt the dynamics of the sound. Then usually there's a filter envelope when you're thinking about like subtractive synthesis, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of the starting point, and then everybody was like, everything I read online was like, oh, you need VCAs. I was like, what the heck is a VCA? Like I don't even know what that is. But then I realized these are more just like it's almost like you're building like your own custom synth, and a lot of these pieces are more like the internal parts of a synth that you wouldn't necessarily know are there. But that's the thing, is like you got to build every little piece. If let's say I'm designing a synthesizer, I got to build the oscillator. I got to get that. I got to get the envelope generators, the devices that sculpt the envelopes. But then I need the VCAs to actually put the sound into it, and the VCA is what actually allows the envelope to do what it does.
For sure, yeah.
And then, so I think I started with like an oscillator, envelope generator, a VCA. So then I had the sound, and then I was like, okay, I want some filters. So then I bought a filter, and then, they talk about all this thing called like CV and modulation and stuff, which I didn't even know exactly what that was, but I was like, I think I need some of those. So I was just starting to throw random things into my cart. And then next thing I know, I'm looking at the price. I was like, oh my goodness. But then you order all this stuff, and then you're like, okay, I can do this, but now I need this piece, and I need this piece and this piece. So then it just started growing and growing. And like, honestly, when you're there's this website called Modular Grid.
Yep.
And it's basically like just a website where you can build out your dream synth, like your dream modular synth, and you can put in all the parts and make sure it all fits.
I've used that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a little plan it. Yeah, I think it was like about 2 years ago. I had a little plan. I think. Yeah.
So it's great for like planning out your synth, and then so that was the thing. And then honestly, like I was going down this rabbit hole, like
as you do as a musician. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was literally like having sleepless nights, like just thinking about how I'm gonna piece this all together. And I'm like, oh my god, the wall is just getting deeper and deeper. I was like, but I gotta do this. I need this. And and then ultimately, once I really started getting a sense of the bigger picture, what I learned was that I wanted to create almost like a DAW without a DAW, like, you know what I mean? So like a whole groove box system where I could essentially make an idea, like a whole musical composition, an idea.
Yep.
And so now I have like 4 or 5 or 6 different oscillators. I have multiple filters, tons of modulation things. And then it's like, okay, what else do you need? So now you need some drum machines. So I got drum machines in there, but then you need mixers. So I got a bunch of mixers, like this one, for example, which has like EQ and all this stuff.
Yeah, that looks brilliant, that one there.
Yeah, this one's a pretty wild little device. But then you need your effects, right? Yep. So, and that's where like, not only the oscillators, you can get like otherworldly sounding oscillators, but you can also get like these otherworldly sounding filters and effects and all this stuff. So,
for sure, yeah.
So yeah, like I got this one thing called the data bender, which basically it's supposed to imitate like CDs skipping, like when you used to listen to like CDs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it creates all these like weird glitchy like sounds and stuff. Yeah. And then the mimeophone, which is like just this crazy reverb delay unit. The list just goes on, and that's kind of the cool thing about modular, is that there's it's like you're building your own custom PC, so it could really be like whatever you want it to be, right? Yeah. So in my case, I wanted to build an all-in-one groove machine, but for somebody else building out a modular system, it could be a completely different angle, right?
For sure.
And then it kind of just built off that, and I think once I got the offer to do the first live set, then I started to have to think like bigger picture. Okay, like how am I going to make enough sounds and different melodies and all this stuff to keep it interesting, right?
Yeah.
And that's when it really all started coming together. Like, okay, now I need this for this purpose and that for that purpose. And yeah, so I think for now, hopefully I'm done buying any more modules for a while. But that in a nutshell is kind of like where it took me. And the next piece of equipment, you can't really see it in the camera, but I got an Ableton Push 3 there, which really tied it together, because I learned in my production process with the modular, with the type of music I make, like the drums are usually very layered and complex and whatnot. So I just found I had an easier time making drums in Ableton.
Yeah.
And then putting the modular sounds on top of it rather than trying to build the drums in there.
Because you can buy them, can't you? To certain kick drum modules, right, and stuff like that.
Yeah, which I have one actually. I have one, the BIA, but it was really hard to just try and get the sounds that I wanted. And even some things like sidechain compression and like other things like that. When the Push 3 came out, I was like, I still don't want a computer in my setup. But when the Push 3 came out, it was like having the power of Ableton for like all those mixing tools and the sequencing, all that stuff. It just really kind of tied it together.
Just gives you more tools, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to curate a better set.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the game changer for me. And now it's just great. I got these myriad of tools that I can do to create these different ideas, and it's just ever changing. Like I was doing the circuit at the Vault, last summer and whatnot, and I had this live set. So when you think about building out a live set, like obviously it's a lot of work, and then you're not like, you might tweak your live set when you play one gig after another because you don't always want it to be the same. But essentially it's like being in a band again, where it's like you have your original songs.
Yeah.
These are all original. So I'd play the same songs for some of the live sets.
Yep.
But kind of grow them, make them better, make changes. But my goal, since I haven't really done any live sets recently, my goal for next summer or my next series of live sets is to have a completely different set than before and make it better, of course.
Yeah. Right? So for me, when I was doing live sets, I always have stuff written down on a notepad, right, where I want to put things, and it's sort of like that, right? So I like this track, and here's how I'd have to set it up for the next one. Mm-hmm. And then I would, because I use the Arturia, I told you previously, I used the Beat Step Pro, and you keep a kit going and some hats, and then I would start sorting out my synth, for the next songs,
Yeah.
So how do you transition from when you make one song to the other?
All right, could you
sorry,
repeat that question?
Another PP break. So you've got your song, like you said earlier. You have your tracks they're kind of planned out. You play the same songs over and over, kind of thing. How do you go from one song to another to keep things going? Because, like I said earlier, with the Beat Step, I was keeping stuff going. But how do you do it with this?
Yeah. So that was part of the challenge, right? Like when I first started trying to build this out, is how am I going to switch from one song to another? Because it's not like exactly like DJing.
Yeah.
Where you mix the tracks in. So again, Ableton with the Push, the beauty of it was I had the session view, and basically I'd have like 16 bar loops created for the progression of the song. So even here you can see where I have
I put it on the full camera there. Yep.
Yeah, so here you can see that I have a bunch of clips, and as the song progresses, I go down from the one clip to the next, and then I would basically create a project that would have 13 songs laid out like this.
Okay.
So I'd have like 5 different kicks, and I would reuse some of the fundamental sounds, like the kick drums and the hats and some of the claps. But then the beauty with the modular is that some of these plugins can save presets and whatnot. So you could use MIDI and CV to actually switch between the presets.
Okay.
Right. So that was where it really started coming together, and that was when I had to figure out how to keep it interesting and evolving.
So did you have like a CV splitter where you could go from one and split that sound to another one? Is that what you're saying? Sorry?
Well, so some of these plugins actually have built-in presets.
Oh, okay, gotcha,
right? So you can use like a CV, just like I send one CV pitch to the quad drum, for example, and it'll the CV, whatever level of CV it is, it'll actually change the preset based on the CV level.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
it's been a while since I've done some Eurorack stuff, so I'm kind of learning back again. Yeah. So that's cool, man. And so anyone that wants to start it, then, so what would you recommend for that?
Have a big wallet.
A big wallet, yeah.
Have a big wallet. That would be the first thing. Have a big wallet, but yeah, I just think it would really just come down to like, what is it that you want to accomplish? With it, right? And think about it. Like, do you just want like a synthesizer with one voice and a filter and some effects? Do you want like a drum machine? Do you want like a full-fledged DAW? Do you want like just something that generates weird bleeps and bloops?
Yep.
Right? And then kind of just expanding off that. There's tons of like tutorials on YouTube and whatnot on how to start building your rack, but then also there's a program, a free program. I think it's called VCV Rack.
Yeah.
And that's like a free program you could download. And basically it is a DAW version or a software version of a modular synth.
Okay.
So that and it has a lot of the modules, like VST versions of the modules that you can actually buy and stuff. So that would be a great way to learn the fundamentals of modular synthesis.
Gotcha. And I know this question might be a little bit painful for you, but how much is a setup like that for people that want to know
this one?
That sort of size, yeah.
Man, I've probably spent, like, with everything here, this is probably like $30,000.
Whoa,
yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't spend that much when I done it. Jesus.
Yeah.
And it cost me an arm and a leg just for a little bit I had.
You know how I told you I had those sleepless nights, man?
Yeah.
Part of it was that reason.
Fuck it.
I'm just like realizing how much money I spent, but you know, like, you know, we're grown ups now, and
well, at least you're investing in yourself. That's the major thing, right? You're investing in your I'll call it your brand, but yourself and your music and you know, that's the important thing.
I have you know, colleagues and friends at work and stuff who spend $30,000 on a road bicycle. You know what I mean? Or nice cars or clothes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm a pretty no frills kind of guy outside of my music stuff. So this is where I like to spend my money. And, you know, if anybody wants to go down that road, just do it responsibly, you know? If you want to have something like this, then you got to make the money to do it, right? Certainly it's not worth going into debt for, like, by any means. But,
for sure.
But again, that kind of goes back to my point about the hardware journey, where it's like, don't buy any hardware if you think it'll make you a better producer, because it won't.
Yeah. And that's why I ask you these questions, because, you know, people look at this stuff and they see like some social media posts and they're like, I need that. Yeah. Because that guy's successful, you know? And I know you anyway fairly well, and I know that you're very knowledgeable in this. So explaining that is good, that, you know, you don't need to spend thousands upon thousands and you think it's going to make you a good producer.
It won't. And in fact, the crazy thing about the modular is it made me realize that Ableton's actually kind of like a modular synth. Actually, if you think about it, almost every DAW is almost like a modular synth, because think about like your channel, like you said, you use Reason, right?
Yeah, because it's all racks in front of you.
Yeah, but like even like think about like in Ableton, I have a channel. Let's say if I put a sampler on the channel, you know, you're putting an EQ after that. You're putting a compressor. You're putting effects. That's almost modular in itself, because you're choosing what comes next, right? So there's nothing that there's no piece of hardware that can essentially do something better than what Ableton and software can do. Like Ableton and software will always be the most flexible and comparable sound designing tool.
For sure.
But you know, one thing is, like, when I bought my first synthesizer, it really taught me how to sculpt sounds and create it myself, right? Where like when you're on a computer, it's just you got the mouse, right? You got the mouse and that's it. Whereas like when you have the tangible knobs and all that stuff in front of you, it really kind of teaches you synthesis like a different way, right? And then that was like value in itself, because then I was like, okay, now I can create my own sounds with like Serum or something if I plan to do it in the box, right? Just like this, when I'm going to go back to the data bender, because that's one of the wildest ones I have, where it's like, okay, it makes all these glitchy sounds, but then it kind of like the way CV works and random LFOs and all this stuff that I use in here, it kind of taught me how to like use Ableton a little bit differently to kind of, it's almost like it inspired me to do the way I produce things in there.
Yeah, I was going to say this, because when I got into, well, I haven't got as much equipment as I used to now, but when I was buying hardware stuff and things like that, it made me a little bit of a better producer in understanding things. Yeah. I wouldn't say it made me a better producer of what I'm chucking out, because it's all mostly ideas, but it helped me understand how to, you know, bend and design a sound. Yeah. And add things to it. Like, you know, in Reason, I don't know if you've ever used it or you've ever seen it.
I've seen it, but
it auto routes everything. But you can also route everything yourself. So you hit the tab button, it flips around, and you can, you know, do everything manually. Right? And that's kind of how that helped me understand a bit more about this. And so I can see what you're saying about, you know, doing Ableton and, you know, mix the two together helps you understand, become a better producer in that way. Yeah. So that's a good one. Appreciate it. So with the one track that you've got going on then, and you've got you go on to another track, and you say some of them are built-in patches. Now, do you have to change any of the patch cables in order to create that next song?
Sure. Yeah. So going back to kind of what I was telling you earlier about how I got this all working together for a longer set. So the presets was one thing. You know, some modular guys, you know, I think I saw Dark Arps play at Bass Coast or somewhere else, and I saw that I think he was changing some wires on the spot. And for me, I think I'm too, maybe just like too by the book or too methodical, like with the way I make my sets, where I just want everything in place, so I'm too scared to do something that drastic on the fly. So this patch I have here is more of a basic patch, which I'm sure we'll get into. But when I do a live set, like I got all these wires here, like tons of wires routed through this whole thing. But again, some of these things have presets where you can basically, like when you load the new preset, it's a completely different sound, right? But some of these other synths, I'll use like basically the same sound through my whole set, but just play them differently, like different progressions and different melodies. And then, like, I mean, for me, it's pretty extensive because I have 16 channels going into this. So 16 MIDI channels, all going into this. So I have 16 different sound sources. And each song that I play, they're not going to be using all the sound sources. Like they might, I might use like 4 or 5 for one track and then switch to a different one. So it's enough variety in my sets to keep it interesting, if you will. And then again, for transitioning, when I have the songs set up in sequences there, when I switch to, like, you know, I do my bass, my fundamental drums, and some background like filler loops maybe in Ableton, and that's what's running from the push 3. So the kick and the bass will change when I go to the next track, obviously, and then the way the MIDI's playing through my push 3 into there, that's what determines how you know, the sounds that'll come out. I'm probably not explaining it the best right now, but
no, I think you're doing a great job, mate. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing a fantastic job. Go on.
Yeah. So, you know, and then it's all kind of a process here where, you know, again, I have my sound sources and they're routed through the system in a certain way. And then again, going back to this blue box here, that's the mixer, right? So that's the brains behind it. And, you know, I'll have everything controlled with like the volume, the EQs and everything. So in my sets, everything's already has its place before, you know, I'm actually performing the set. So then when I'm doing the live set, I'll be modulating the filter. I might play a couple random notes like on one of the voices, or again, effects routed a certain way where I can tweak them live. But honestly, you know, I think when I was watching one of your videos from your live sets, I remember, I think you told me that you do a lot of the sounds and the melodies and the stuff kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have headphones. I do it. Do you have headphones when you do it?
Yeah, I do have a cue here, but I haven't explored that enough yet.
Okay, because I use a normal mixer, right? Just a normal DJ mixer, and then I'll cue in. I had a 6-channel mixer, and then on that channel 1 will be my Moog DFAM, and another one will be like the 303, and then another one will be called keys or whatever, right? And then I'll go from an acid sound, and then I'll keep the kick going, and then I will go and make a sound. Because if you, like you say, if you know like LFOs and VCOs and things like that, and you know you filter pretty well certain octaves of what you get, you know, what sort of sound, pitch, whatever, then you kind of know what sort of sound you want to draft. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit, like you can sort of, you know, I know how to make this sound. I know how to make an acid sound. So okay, I'll turn the filter right up and I'll turn the res down. And then it will, like, you know, make a squelchy sound, right?
You're actually sculpting those sounds on the fly.
Yeah.
See,
yeah.
I haven't. I'm too scared to do that. I haven't done that yet, but that is something like.
It did shit me up. Don't get me wrong. I was like, this either sounds really shit, or people are gonna like it.
Yeah, and I think for me that's kind of the part where I've yet to explore, because I just I built the whole set before my gigs. Right.
Yeah.
And a part of me wants to explore, like, hey, what if I was to just take a chance and start doing more things live and whatnot? But I've just haven't been confident enough to take that leap quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, like you're more knowledgeable than this than I am for sure. I mean, but everyone, like you said earlier, everyone's journey is a bit different, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure you'll be able to do it on the fly soon.
Hopefully, one day.
Just got to get over that barrier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, with regards to getting the sound for an hour, then, so you're kind of saying that you use this to fill certain areas where you're kind of doing stuff with that as well. So, tell me how you blend the push with it as well, because we were going through it earlier about like how you've got MIDI going out to it into that through via USB. And you also said that you can literally copy and paste everything onto that push.
Yeah.
So tell me that process of how you do that before a set.
Yeah, so with like every live set I've done, because before I even had the push, I had the Electron Digitact, and the Digitact had 8 MIDI channels, and it was an 8-voice drum machine. Oh, wow. But with the music that I write, like the minimal percussive stuff, the flexibility of Ableton to create those fundamental drum sounds and the bass, I found it's just really hard to do that in the system. So I learned early on, I was like, I need Ableton. As much as I want to get away from the DAW, I was it just sounds best when I create those fundamental sounds in Ableton. And then in my first live set, I actually transferred all the drum sounds to the Digitact, which was like a nightmare. It was such a pain in the butt.
Right, okay.
But again, but before having the push, I was doing the 8 voices. So I had this MIDI to CV. So MIDI to CV is essentially the ability to take MIDI channels into your modular rig and, turn it into CV, right? So just like how you had the beat step, same concept. So I was doing that initially with the Digitact, and the first live set went great. But when the Push 3 came out, that was when it was like, okay, now I can literally just create those sounds in Ableton, the drums, and in my Ableton project.
Sorry, I'm just going to put the camera to there.
No problem. Let me see if I can just... Well, anyways, I won't... Maybe I can try and show us just... How do I move this? There we go. Yeah, so basically, I have the 16 channels in my Ableton project. So this is a template I use now for when I'm building out a live set. I have all these channels here that are my MIDI channels 1 to 16, right? So again, right now I have it routed so that the Push 3 is connected to my computer, and then it sends the MIDI to my modular, and then the modular, the outputs of the modular right now are going back into my sound card that is playing the sounds back in Ableton, right? But so I build all this, I do the MIDI data, like the compositions, right? Like, so like here you can see I have like MIDI notes, right? Yep. So that's the melodies and the and whatnot that's being fed to the modular. So once I sculpt all that out, I build my 10 to 13 tracks in here for my live set with this, process. And then the beauty of the Push 3 is it can control live, or it can be standalone. So once I'm done that here, I even mix and master it and everything in Ableton.
Yep.
I can basically save the project and then Wi-Fi drop it into the Push 3.
Yes.
And then the Push 3 has standalone mode, which again, this is Ableton in a box, right? Without the computer. So at that point, and then I got to just do few things of configuration to make sure the MIDI's working. But essentially everything I create in Ableton is now being fed from this device into the modular, and then my modular output goes into the Push 3, because the Push 3 has 2 audio inputs. Right?
Oh, right, okay.
So now I have the modular going into the Push, the audio inputs there, and then the Push 3 has 2 outputs as well, right? So that's what goes into the club system or whatever, right? So it's actually once it's all set up, like the patching is a lot of work, but to plug into a club system or anywhere I want to go play, it's actually super simple at that point.
Nice, mate. Yeah. I'm great, because for me it's confusing when you got to think, okay, that's going to that. Then you need that to go back to that, and then you got to really plan that out in your head, haven't you? And it's
been a journey.
Like I can see why you have sleepless nights just trying to plan that out in your head, because that's stressful for me just thinking about it right now.
And it was even worse not that it was worse. So like the Electron devices are like amazing devices, like they're so good and they're so much fun to play with. But just for me at that point, when I was already just decided, I was like, I need to build the drums in Ableton, because I can't do it otherwise. And like, I just, my obsession is just to try and make anything I write as professional sounding as possible. Right.
Yeah,
So the live set was another thing. Like some live sets, you know, I'm just saying randomly, like could be some artists who are maybe a little more rough and rigid with their live sets.
Definitely me.
Sure. But like, it was just like, you know, I just always wanted the thought of like, if I was to finish my set and just looped one of my outros, my track, like could somebody mix into it and it would sound just as good, or vice versa, right?
Yep.
And you know, like I just wanted it to, of course, be as enjoyable as possible for the listeners when I'm doing a live set, because my music, a lot of my tracks have a lot of layers. The drums have a lot of layers. Again, 16 MIDI channels. Sometimes there's a lot going on with the modular.
Yeah.
So it's like, some modular guys might like, you know, do like an ambient set, right? Where there's no drums, and it's like dynamically it's a little bit easier to probably mix that in the Eurorack.
They're sick, and they're ambient ones.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there was Dysart at Bass Coast last year. He brought one of his modular rigs, like basically half of what I had. He played it was like the recovery tent. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, did you
everyone's hung out. Everyone's hung out in his kind of chill. Like,
So he played a really good modular set there, but you know, ambient like. But that's a lot of like you know, having the drums, like lots of drums. Drums are really dynamic, and I find like any aspiring producer, like the hardest thing I think to kind of figure out and master is like making it all fit together, dealing with the transients of the drums, making sure the kick and the bass is level and good. So all those things were running through my mind when I was building this stuff out, and it was just the end goal of just wanting it to be as good as it could possibly be. And from that live set, it's like, you know, if I wanted to like release that song as like a pro track, like if there was one song from my live set that I thought was my favorite, it's like I want to release it on a label or something. Like I want it to be as close to that quality without having to like really tweak it that much after.
Yeah. That's wicked. And what would you say you've got any sort of people that inspire you with like Eurorack and modular stuff, like Colin Benders or Look Mum No Computer, or anyone that does it? You think, wow.
Yeah. You know what? The whole modular community, there is like a big thriving community online, right? You know, you go on Instagram, there's like I'm just gonna call it like iPorn when it comes to modular synth. Like so much of it, like online, where people are doing these intricate jams. I think a couple of the guys, if I was to name a few, Yayo, I believe his name is, from the UK. He does kind of more like garagey breakbeat kind of stuff, but he has a whole modular setup. He does good for himself from what I can see. Big following online. And again, it's just him jamming out in the studio. So that was an inspiration. Another guy named, I think his name's Spank or Spouk. Apologies if you're watching this and I'm saying it wrong, but he's I think he's from Australia or Austria, but now he lives in like I think Indonesia. And again, he just posts these jams, and he does everything from like minimal to like techno-ish stuff to weird melodic stuff. But again, very percussive, very like kind of weird sounding stuff. And that's the thing I love about the Eurorack stuff, is that like the way, like I still feel like I'm very rigid and methodical with this, but some guys really just expand the sound, you know, spectrum with just, you know, adding a delay to the clap and making it stutter in crazy ways, or like, you know, adding like a weird resonator to a vocal to make it really otherworldly. Like I don't do that stuff enough yet, which I want to. But yeah, so those would be a couple guys. Richard Devine, he's also just a
Richard Devine's wicked, isn't he? And Hansberger as well.
Oh yeah.
True Cuckoo is another good one.
Yeah,
I like watching that stuff.
Yeah. There's just so many online.
Yeah.
There's a couple good blogs you could follow too, that just post this content on the regular. Just artists from all over the world just doing these crazy jams. So, but those would be a couple to just name a few for you.
Yeah, like even like you said when we were speaking before we started the podcast there, you said to me like there's a guy in Argentina that, because you said it's a good network and a good community, you actually spoke and met someone online in Argentina, and you know, like you say, you've made friends with people like that through this stuff.
Yeah. So Del Fonda, that was he's a super talented producer. He's not a modular guy himself, but in the deep tech minimal community, like he has just so many releases, and for years I was following that guy, and from my like modular jams that I posted online. Excuse me. He just kind of reached out to me after so many years. Like he just followed me one day on Instagram after me following for years. I was like, oh, it must be like a bot he's using or something to like follow people so people can follow him. But then he just like messaged me right after. He's like, hey dude, like love your sound. He's like, you want to collab? Like all this stuff. And actually like I've gotten quite a few labels reach out to me, like Rominimal labels,
nice.
Different types of artists and people reach out to me just purely for my modular jams. So it's crazy what the internet could do, especially if you're like trying to do something different. Like I'm not saying I'm really reinventing the wheel or anything, but you know, I've only seen a handful of other modular guys who are doing like live minimal house kind of like modular jams.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so that was really cool, and yeah, the community is very thriving in that sense.
Good way I mean, because I remember you saying that actually. Yeah, so I do apologize, but yeah, you me and a guy with the music. So that kind of goes on to me. That kind of goes on to with regards to your productions and like making tracks and things like that. So obviously, we've briefly spoke about your music productions in the past. So what is like your aim and your future plans for producing? What have been your highlights of your best releases so far?
Yeah, well,
sorry, long-winded question, but
no.
You're so knowledgeable. I want to get as much out of you as possible. So
I appreciate that. So I might have said this earlier when we were talking before setting up. I think I have like musical ADD. So I've been producing since 2010, and I've produced techno, tech house, melodic techno, now minimal, I've had some great releases in the techno times. When I was doing techno, I've worked with a handful of producers where we released and had our music played by artists like Umek, Spartak, Steve Mulder, Yellowheads, and this was during the techno time, but those were some highlights for me at that point. But I rebranded essentially now that I'm into this stuff, and that's where Paul Franc came out, and the modular stuff. But if you were to listen to some of my modular tracks, like from last year, my live sets that are on my SoundCloud and YouTube and stuff, it was more like dreamy, deep, Rominimal stuff. But then I was playing like the stuff I was showing you earlier. It's more like deep tech driving, minimal tech house now. So I just realized that I'm always kind of just getting inspired and doing different things. So now my sound is kind of going more darker and driving and more tech house like. So trying to fit the modular into that is kind of something I'm working on right now, and just trying to see how I can blend the two together, because I just really went one direction with the sound there, and now I'm going different direction with my productions, and those productions I'm releasing were done in the box, right? Like there was no modular stuff. So
for sure.
And if I get some of the gigs I'm hoping to get this summer, I'm really going to try and reinvent the wheel with the sound and everything. So that's going to be. Did that answer the question? I feel like I went off.
Yeah, so it's a long-winded question, I know, but yeah, it's about your productions, what you got coming out here. But like you were saying, you've done this in the box with a certain sound, and you've done a certain sound in that box, right? Yeah. So you're trying to blend the two together.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to I've heard lots of established artists say this, and guys who have hardware as well. It's like sometimes you feel a little bit guilty when you're just producing too much in the box, and you're just looking at your synth, it's like collecting dust, and it's like, oh man, but I spent so much money on this, I should be using it. But ultimately, it's just, I think to be a successful artist or producer, it's about finishing projects and finishing ideas. And it's like, once you really hit that creative flow, which fortunately I feel like I've been producing since 2010, and I feel like over the past year and a bit, I've really started hitting my creative flow like in the best way ever in my years as a producer.
Yeah.
But I can't overthink about where I'm getting what sound from where. Like if it works, I don't overthink it, and I keep going on and finishing those tracks, because you need to finish music, you need to get it out there, you need to be consistent. That's the only way. Like that's the artists that I've seen have gone places and been successful are the ones who've done that consistently, right? So
for sure, yeah.
Getting too wrapped up on a certain idea or concept, like I've just learned for myself, like with my musical ADD again, I just write what comes out, and that's it.
I recommend that to people. just write the first thing that comes to mind. But I'm shit at taking my own advice. I've got, like I say, ADD. I'll just like focus on one sound, manipulate it 10 times. It sounds just as shit. It sounds worse than what it did from the start, you know.
Well, that's another thing I kind of learned as well as a producer, and this is pretty pivotal to my creative flow. So, you know, I'm just gonna give these two pieces of advice that wasn't asked, but
you crack on.
So first and foremost is like finding the right sounds. You need to have the right sounds to work with each other, and that goes beyond any sort of compressor, any sort of EQing, any sort of anything like that. Finding the right sounds that fit with each other, making sure the volumes are good. That's the first step to making anything sound good in your productions. 2, you know, the music I'm writing right now is very percussive, very drum based, but like I actually never start a track with the kick and the bass and that.
You don't?
No, I don't do that, because anytime I do that, I find I get lost in the loop of like just adding more things that it just based on adding more layers of drums, but then it just is never going anywhere and still feels like it's missing something.
Yeah.
So what I actually do with my productions is I start with the hook first. Okay. Whatever the hook is. So in the stuff I showed you earlier, it's all vocal based, right?
Yep.
So the hook is the vocal for those types of tracks, those driving like minimal deep tech tracks. It's usually the vocal or a synth line, but in my case, it's the vocals. And once I find the vocal and I make it sound how I want it to sound, and I cut it and slice it and do whatever, that's what determines the rest of the track for me.
Gotcha.
Right. So then I'll probably create the bass and then maybe the hat and the clap. Then I actually do the kick last, because I find like the kick is like the hardest thing to always make sit well in the mix, and it's the most important thing. So if you start a track, like if I was to start a track with just a kick and then I tried to fit the bass around it and all this stuff, I feel like it's like, again, I'm just building it off this kick, where it's more like you should find the kick that fits the rest of your track rather than basing it all around that kick.
Yeah. You know?
I'm
a bit of a culprit for that.
Yeah, a lot. but again, you might talk to another producer who's the other way around. He's like, no, like I start with the kick and the bass, and that's the most important thing, and this is how I finish it, right?
Yeah, and this is why I like doing the podcast, because again, like your word of advice and your production skills might benefit someone else. Like I learned a lot from talking to people, watching YouTube videos, talking, you know, doing these podcasts. But people that are listening might be like, you know, something so simple is there, but we never grasp it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We never like. You know, we know we kind of, it's in front of us really, and we don't see it. And something simple like that, it could be super beneficial for someone who's getting into producing or has struggle finishing.
Yeah,
that's right. So
yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. Like, you know, getting advice from friends and having a circle of friends who can give you good feedback is very important. You can watch tutorials for days and still it doesn't get you anywhere, you know, because then you're just copying like the settings that they have without really understanding the core problem that you're trying to solve or accomplish with that, right? Oh boy, I lost my train of thought. But the geez, what was I gonna say?
As regards to like your word of advice might help some other people,
right?
In that regard, yeah.
Right. So struggling with music. So believe it or not, like when I was telling you about how it's like you go, like, I think a lot of artists, they start with like, they create a bunch of music and it's exciting. They're finishing tracks and maybe the quality's not where they think it is, but it's just like this bliss of just finishing ideas. But then eventually they hit a wall and then they downward spiral where it's like, oh my God, I suddenly can't write anything. Everything I make is garbage. Like it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound like the pro tracks. Like there was a series of years actually where I, for the life of me, couldn't find the right kick drum.
Oh boy.
I couldn't find the right kick drum in any of my ideas or any of my tracks, and I couldn't finish a track for like 3 years.
Shall I tell you something?
Yeah.
You mentioned that makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. So
I had the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck this shit. I'm done with it. I'm pissed off of it. And I had like a 4 to 5 year break.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Canada, I was like, all right, I might get back into it now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
it happens to a lot of people, man. A lot of people.
So refreshing you brought that up.
Yeah, but for me, like I do music. Like obviously I would love to be touring the world, playing in every city imaginable. Like that's always the end goal. But like, you know, I enjoy the process more than anything. I love sitting in the studio. I love making beats. I love it when you finally got that like that hook and like it's just all vibing. You're like, yes, this is fire. Like those are the wins for me. And even those 3 years that I couldn't mix were shit and I couldn't finish anything. I still sat in the studio every day, almost having like a mental breakdown every day because I couldn't do this. But I was like, without music, like I don't know what I would do, man. Like I wouldn't even know who I am. Like I feel like I wouldn't be living life. So, you know, I think the perseverance, even through those hard times, because the hard times are going to happen to, maybe it's not in the studio, maybe it's something else. Like
just everyday life. Yeah,
it's not an easy industry, and like even with me, like I've seen artists who started the same time as me. I've seen artists that have started after me and are light years ahead of me now.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so easy to like compare yourself but that's also like your demise if you do that, right? Like every journey is different. And, you know, I think what really just makes an artist is if you're able to get through those hard times and persevere.
That's like, I had Rosker on, who's a legend back in the UK with the UK funky house music sort of scene. And, he said the same thing, you know, he's like, his analogy was, you know, kind of just like if you're on the same road and you went one way, it might take you longer to get there, but we still meet up at the same end, same destination, you know, like you might know a shortcut, but I don't. And then that's kind of, and that's, you know, kind of refreshing to hear as well. Cause definitely what you said about the fucking it off for like 5 years, because I thought I was the only person, but
no,
clearly not. Fuck.
No, I know quite a few people who have been through that. And I actually, to that analogy you just shared, I remember I had a buddy back in Toronto who was a comedian, and I remember one day I was kind of in the dumps because this one artist was getting ahead of me, and I was like, because I don't know if I was like competitive, maybe just thinking with a bit of an ego or something. I was younger, I was in my 20s, whatever. But I remember he told me something. He's like, you got to understand, like the creative space in general, like be it the music industry, be it whatever, like there's no corporate ladder, there's no union. Like it's like you got to view it like a McDonald's line. Let's say you go to a McDonald's restaurant and it's like super busy and there's multiple lines. You might go on one line and then the other person might go on the other one, and then you think this line's faster, but then that person gets to there first, but we're all going to make it to the cash register or the you know, to get your burger or whatever, as long as you wait. Well, in this case, as long as you put in the work. But it's the same kind of analogy, right? If you keep working at it, you'll eventually get there, right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy actually. Fuck. Bit of Mackie D's involved there, but that's good, mate. I'm glad you brought something like that, because a lot of people, which I'm going to go into, is like social media now. Before we finish up, is you know, how do you navigate that with your thing? Because like you say, people comparing themselves. You're doing it back then when social media wasn't even that big, kind of thing. But now it's pumping with everything after vid. How do you navigate on that and not compare yourself to other people online?
Well, so like, I mean, I never really compared myself on the social media side of things. It was more just like the releases kind of things. And then like how many, I guess the only part I would compare myself is like, oh wow, how the hell did this artist get like 10,000 followers? Like, how do I do that kind of thing? But I was more like, I would more compare myself to being like, oh my God, like this person just signed with this label or that person signed to that label. That would kind of get at me a bit, like in my younger years. Now I've since then I've let the ego go.
Older and wiser.
The ego is gone. Like I just do this because I love it and that's it. Like, you know, I wish everybody has the success that they work in. Like I'm a firm believer, is you put in the work, you will get the reward. And if you're not putting in the work, then you're not going to get it, right? Like, and if you do put in the work and you get success from that, even if it takes you light years beyond me, I'm going to say congratulations. You put in the work, you deserve it, right?
Yeah.
People don't. There might be a little bit of luck, but it's 90% of it, I think, is putting in the work, be it networking, producing, whatever, social media. So when it comes to the social media stuff, like it's become such a formula. So like, I feel like artists need to be content creators these days, and that's just the name of the game. And people on social media just love watching people do shit. You know
they do, yeah. Right? Especially with the whole, because on my explore feed, I've got loads of modular stuff, and just watching people just making tunes, be like lo-fi sort of sounds, or it could be like house techno. Yeah. So I think when I started with the modular stuff, it was just like, I think I committed at one point to do like a jam a week on my socials, and I haven't been staying true to that lately. Well, we spoke about a couple of years ago, didn't we? I think we kind of you said to me, I'm gonna. Yeah. So that's what I was doing for a bit, and that it did pay off. It's what got me some of the opportunities that I did at the time, and which was great. But now I'm more focused on releasing music on labels. So that's kind of where the energy is going. But at the end of the day, you still have to keep that social game strong. Like whether you're getting some bookings or whatever. Like I think there's a certain art to like posting a lot of stuff like online now. It's like
having those fresh promo shots or having a video of you in the studio. Like, again, I just think people like watching people do shit. They want to see your face. They want to see who you are. They want to see your personality.
Yep.
Right. And if you're not doing that, then I think you're only potentially hindering yourself as an artist. Like, again, like so many producers will just do a little video of them jamming in the studio to their song, and like it's almost like you're TikTok dancing or some shit.
Yeah,
it's kind of silly, of course, but like
that's the way. That's the game now, right?
But you can always do it in your own way that just is you, right? As long as you be yourself, then that's it. But yeah, I pretty much think that artists nowadays are content creators.
Yeah, you have to be. You have to be the whole package. And like Ed Sheeran said this perfectly, was use social media as a tool. That's all it is for. Yeah. Don't scroll through it. Just use it as an advertisement. It's a free advertisement, a free branding thing.
Yep.
Don't compare yourself to other people on there. Just use it as a tool. That's all it's meant to be used for. And I thought that was one of the best bits. Yeah.
It's so easy to get distracted by it, by all the noise.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But it's a wonderful tool. Like the whole internet, like it's just so crazy how the internet revolutionized music and also kind of changed the industry. Like,
yeah, definitely,
making music off, sales, like music sales is like not a reality. Maybe if you release your own vinyl or something, like you can make a couple $100 or something,
your own
right?
Discord, right? Take a little bit of a cut, but not,
But to get nowadays in the music industry, I think like the way to make money is through gigs, right? Like that's the way to make the money. But how do you get those big gigs? By building a brand and a presence online and releasing music. And that music won't make you much money, but those are the keys, the stepping stones to get to those big gigs that pay you a couple $1,000 or whatever, right? And then that's at that point is when you can potentially start making a living off music.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And also, like you say, like sponsors as well. A lot of people get sponsored from doing like what you do with your Eurorack, and people are like, I'll keep,
Oh yeah, please. Any Eurorack manufacturers, please send me modules. I don't want to pay for them anymore.
Let's do it,
please.
And you could do like a review, and I'll video it, and then you can do like YouTube review video.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll review all day.
So, what are your future plans then for yourself with regards to the Paul Franc, the brand? Obviously, your modular stuff. Like, what we got to look forward to?
Yeah, just nowadays, I'm just really just grinding in the studio. Again, I feel like I hit that creative flow, so I really want to just like get a catalog of music pre-planned to be released in like a year in advance. You know what I mean? So like when you sign to a label, it takes months to come out, right?
For sure, yeah.
So I want to just have like that constant releases for at least a year in advance. So then I got that backlog. That's because when you release new music, that's more content. It's more stuff for your fans, whatever. So that's an important part of my brand right now. That's where I'm putting like 90% of my energy. Playing some gigs here or there, got Wonky Town in the summer. Hopefully some other festivals are lining up. There'll be a mix of DJ and potentially modular sets. And again, it's now that my sound's a little more deep, dark, and driving and more tech housey, trying to reinvent the wheel with the modular to make it a new experience compared to what you might have seen in the past from my modular sets.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of what's on the near term right now, just long hours in the studio, figuring it all out.
Plugging away. Consistency is key, right? That's the one.
Definitely.
So we're going to go into, we'll get the camera set up and we'll do into a live little modular set.
Yeah, we can do a little jam. I got a little patch set up.
You can obviously talk us through it as well if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, of how it all works and hopefully inspire some people to spend some money and get some nice Eurorack stuff.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is where we are going to go onto the mix now and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you can, from start to finish, explain what you're doing.
Sure.
And how you're going to draft like a nice little mix here. Or well, not a mix, but a set.
Yeah. So, what we were talking about earlier, just very high level. Got the drums and the bass and the MIDI. So the drums and the bass and the fundamental sounds are in the push. Ableton's in the box here, so it's all sequenced already. And then it's sending MIDI data to my modular, which the modular has about 3 or 4 synth voices, a couple drum glitch sounds, and then that's getting fed into the mixer here, the internal Eurorack mixer, and then that Eurorack mixer output is going back into the push to create the whole cohesive sound with the mixing and the mastering and all that stuff. So we'll just get started here.
Perfect.
There you go. Now you can hear like kind of some of the glitchy sounds.
Yeah,
here.
You got it in there now, right? Yeah.
So just like any house track, just kind of starting it off. Here comes the bass. There we go. And then as I kind of progress through the song, the different session clips, there'll be kind of more sounds progressing, just like any house track, right? That's usually how I set it all up here. That's kind of how I sequence it live. Comes the off hat. Some more synth sounds.
So is this all coming through like the push right now? Or is it?
There is some modular sounds. So right now the main star is this guy right here. But once we go to the next sequence here, we're going to start hearing some of the other sounds come in.
Perfect.
So that's the chorals playing here, which is the polyphonic synth module. Has like a filter and everything. If I like kind of bring it up here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a lush chord sound.
That sounds wicked, that does, yeah.
And then also this CSL is playing as well right now. And then we're going to kind of just bring it back to the drop. Bring the filter down a bit. Then we got this sound coming in.
That's nice, that one, yeah.
So you can kind of play with the filter here, right? This is kind of where the fun part comes in with like performing live.
Nice, mate, yeah. So have you got a reverb module in here to get that reverb, or is that reverb coming through Ableton?
So it can go both ways. I have like, just kind of like when you're building a track in Ableton, you'll have that subtle reverb to create the room.
Yeah.
But in the sound of this pad here, this chord, this module is very useful because it actually has a built-in reverb.
Oh, okay.
So I actually added it just in this module itself. I used it from there. And then also this plugin, or this module right here, also has delay and stuff that's kind of just adding to the layers of sound,
gotcha. So can you apply a reverb from that mixer there to a different one there through?
Yeah, there's different ways to route it. So in this case, I'm going to give you one example right here for this next build. So I have basically with this mixer, you can do sends and returns.
Yeah.
So I have right now the send routed to the mimeophone for this acid sound right here. So if I gradually start turning it up here.
Oh man, that's nice.
Yeah, so we got like, I can like add additional reverb. Even kind of like, usually what I do here, I'll show you in a sec here.
That sounds really good.
Right, here we go. So yeah, you kind of like wash it out and stuff.
Yeah.
Then you bring it back in.
Oh.
Yeah, so just lots of, and this is a pretty modest, like, there's so many more ways that you can modulate it and do all sorts of different kind of funky effects and stuff.
Yeah.
This is just kind of a basic patch right now. Yeah. That's pretty much, this jam in a nutshell.
That's
here.
Cool, man, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you going to play us through some other tracks as well?
Just for the purpose of this one, unfortunately, I only have the one set
that's
up.
all good, man. That's all good.
And then kind of just the outro here.
That's cool.
I was hoping to have more time to set up a little bit more for you guys, but lots of stuff. I have a couple live set videos online. I also have something coming out with Triangle Productions.
Yep.
Yeah, so we did a really cool on location live set.
Yep.
Which that's a full hour set with lights and visuals and dancers and stuff.
Yep.
So that's gonna be coming out in the near future. You can see more of the modular there. And then also I have like my Northern House live set that has the full rig and an hour and a half of music. So lots of stuff you can see. But for the purpose of this, I just kind of wanted to give you like a little patch example on kind of what you can kind of do with this. Again, the goal here was to have like an all-in-one groove box, no computer needed.
Yep.
Right? Just everything here, everything you can kind of touch and improvise. And yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Mate, yeah, that's wicked. So is there anything you can show us like on the fly, do you reckon?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know. Do you know why I asked this? Because you said to me, I'm a bit nervous at doing stuff on the fly. So here's the opportunity to just push it out. Oh man, put you on the spot. Yeah.
Okay. I got something in mind for you here. Let me just quickly set something up here.
Sorry, I just thought, fucking Joe, I'm going to ask him.
You know what? I like it. You got to, like I said, you got to challenge me, buddy.
Yeah, man. So this is it. This is the first time probably you're gonna be put on the spot.
Okay, so I'm gonna what I'll do is I'll start the group, but I'm gonna have to do some wiring real quick.
That's fine. You do.
Let me quickly patch something in here, and
Let's go.
And then we're gonna see how it goes. Just bear with me one sec. Why don't I actually just tell you what I'm doing while I do it? Maybe that'll make some sense too.
The camera on there. So go on.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So I got my one MIDI channel here. So I got channel 11 that's going to my Mutant Brain, which is a MIDI to CV.
Yep.
And I have two things going through it. One is a gate, which a gate is kind of like, again, it's basically telling the system to play something, but it's just sending like a note without any pitch, right? So
yeah.
Basically what we're going to do is we're going to send that note data to which channel was it again? This is why I wouldn't do it live. Oh my god! So we're gonna plug this in here.
If you got 16, did you say, or 12?
16 channels.
16 channels, yeah.
Which right now I'm using like 3 or 4 or 5. So
yeah, I'd have that written down.
So here we go. So I'm gonna send it to the rings. So the rings from my live modular sets before. It was kind of one of my staple sounds. I used it a lot. So we just sent the.
Just gonna zoom in there a little bit on that one.
Yeah. It's just this guy. It's a rings clone. So like, it's kind of like a cheaper version of the actual model, but it's the exact same functionality and sound. So, but yeah. So we got the rings here. It creates like resonant kind of sounds. Like it's hard to explain. It's more like physical modeling synthesis rather than just like subtractive or analog or whatever. So now. I'm going to just double check here. So what channels? The rings is going into 5. So right now I'm routing it because I want it to be a stereo sound. Okay. Cool thing about the rings is it can create nice, interesting stereo type sounds. So we're going to just do that. And then I'm going to just plug it in here. Oh, this cable's too long. Cable management, it's also part of the art.
Yeah, getting that right. Yeah.
Right? Especially when you got so many going in. Like, actually, the crazy thing is, though, this is one thing that I like talking about as well. Very nerd territory, but these two right here, this one and this one. Yep. So when you build out a patch and then you want to like bring this to play somewhere, obviously you can box it up in a way that your cables are still together, but if they're between each other, you can't package it up correctly. So this allows me to kind of plug them into here, and then rather than patching between the two things, I just use Ethernet cable.
Oh, nice, mate.
Yeah, so just like kind of streamlines that, right?
So you use it from that one there on the right up to this one there.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
So now we should have some sound. Where is it? Why do I not hear it yet? So 5 and 6.
That's cool, man. That's sick.
Oh, maybe it's too quiet. Maybe that's what's going on. Let's just see.
I was just moving the camera around kind of to where you were...
Sweet.
You were pinpointing there. So
let me just quickly. So cool thing with the push. So here's the sound we got here.
Yep.
I'm going to change it, though, because that's not the sound I want. That one's kind of cool. But we're going to. So yeah, so this is kind of like a ring, kind of like, it's like a weird melodic kind of sound, but let's say if we started the beat again here. So yeah, just tweaking a little bit further. So you can kind of freestyle it, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So again, if we're gonna go like somewhere that has like, just gonna throw it in a part where there's more sounds. I think right here. Gonna bring it back to the beat here. Just one sec. Oh, wrong part. Failing miserably, guys. This is why I don't improvise live. No, I'm playing.
It's all good, though. It's all good fun, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, so now it's like I got this patch where I can like...
That sounds alright. That sounds pretty fucking sick, to be fair.
Just kind of like that, right? So sometimes like with certain sounds I'll have in this, I would like kind of freestyle that. I think it's out of key here. I don't know, I already messed it up somehow, but yeah, that's kind of like some improvisation you could do. Maybe I'd like to have it on like one of my other sounds here. Like these oscillators are really complex. They're like FM synthesizers and whatnot. So
yeah, FM's a different ball game, isn't it?
Actually, FM's what kind of got me into the modular because there's a lot of FM synthesizers. Yeah. This sound right here, it's making the weird like. Oh, you can't really hear it, but anyways. There's lots of possibilities with what you can do and beyond just your traditional synthesis and production. But yeah, like this kind of thing of me playing live is like what I want to do a little bit more in some of my future sets, just kind of more freestyle it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the guts to wire stuff while I'm playing live, that's for sure, but yeah, this is just a quick example of what you can do. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah. There we go. Norm Unplugged. Norm Raw.
Yes, mate. Thanks ever so much for showing me this. This is and also for the viewer.
Maybe cut that part. I don't know why. Yeah. I could do that. No, man. It was.
So good. No, I'm glad you enjoyed doing this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people are gonna love seeing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and thanks for coming out and doing this, man. I've really been wanting to just unpack this all with somebody, and I really appreciate the conversation today. It's good, man. It's really
man, trust me, I've been geeking out. This is my life anyway, right? So, you know, like the whole music thing. So, no, it's been good that you've explained it from. Start to finish, how you do it all, the cost, where to start, your story of how you got into it, and just a live set. The whole process has been wicked. So it's a big value of knowledge, and thanks very much, mate.
Thanks again for having me, and hopefully, this helps somebody in their creative endeavor.
Yeah.
Just trust the process, and just everybody's journey is different, and don't think about the end result. Just think about the enjoyment on the way.
The ride. Yeah, right? Exactly.
The ride, yeah.
Well, mate, so, appreciate it. And anything else you want to sort of leave off with? Or
what's that?
Anything you want to leave with, to the listeners or viewers?
Guys, if focus on this.
Yeah, you are.
I'm sure Brad will be sharing the links on Rave Room, but yeah, check out my music if you like what you heard today. And lots of stuff coming soon, releases coming out with good labels. And, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the music.
Yeah, and also free module stuff, for
please. Any IntelliGel, you out there, man? Send me some modules.
All right, thanks, man. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers.